This pattern often begins with rapid accumulation of wealth through legitimate or questionable means. As wealth grows, so does the individual's influence within exclusive social and financial circles. This elevated status creates a psychological pressure to maintain appearances at all costs. The individual becomes increasingly isolated, surrounded by yes men, and insulated from reality. This isolation often leads to irrational decision-making, particularly regarding risk assessment. The fear of losing status can become more powerful than the fear of financial loss itself. This psychological state makes individuals vulnerable to various forms of exploitation and poor judgment. The pattern shows that extreme wealth doesn't eliminate human vulnerabilities. It often amplifies them. The individual's initial success was built through legitimate business ventures, placing them among the global financial elite. This wealth accumulation followed standard patterns seen in high-growth industries like technology or finance. However, a subsequent period of intense crisis, whether personal, professional, or legal, triggered a fundamental shift in perception. Instead of interpreting setbacks as normal business or life challenges, they began attributing them to a targeted, malicious force, a so-called curse. This fixation represents a documented psychological pattern where extreme stress leads to paranoid ideation and externalization of blame. Their vast resources, which could have been deployed for rational problem solving, were instead diverted into a futile campaign. This campaign often involved hiring teams of investigators, lawyers, or consultants to find evidence of the non-existent conspiracy. The mechanism is self-reinforcing. Each new ordinary misfortune is interpreted as further proof, escalating the commitment. Comparatively, this mirrors patterns seen in other fraud or scandal cases, where denial and blame shifting replace accountability. The ultimate result was the depletion of both fortune and reputation in a battle against a phantom enemy. In fraud cases, a documented decline in core business or legal standing is often the first verifiable sign. This isn't mere speculation. It appears in concrete records like financial reports or regulatory filings. These documents reveal a clear, measurable downward trajectory that can be tracked over time. Such patterns are common in schemes where initial success masks underlying instability. The decline typically follows a predictable sequence: missed targets, investor concerns, then official scrutiny. Regulatory actions or court records provide the hard evidence that separates fact from rumor in these cases. This diversion of assets is a classic red flag in financial fraud investigations. Funds are systematically moved from legitimate business accounts into opaque expenditure categories. Unorthodox consultants are often hired not for expertise, but to create a veil of complexity. Elaborate security projects without clear purpose can serve to intimidate or misdirect scrutiny. Acquiring properties for protective value often means choosing remote or fortified locations. Symbolic property purchases might target landmarks to project power or legacy. These expenditures drain resources while providing little to no return on investment. The pattern creates a financial black hole, making it difficult to trace the original capital. As the situation escalates, trusted professional advisors are systematically pushed out. Lawyers, financial managers, and board members who question the narrative are replaced. Their replacements are individuals who affirm belief in the supposed curse. These new advisors promise solutions that validate the escalating spending. This creates an echo chamber where only supportive voices are heard. The strategy becomes increasingly insulated from critical feedback. This pattern mirrors other financial scandals where isolation preceded collapse. The replacement of professionals with enablers is a common red flag in fraud cases. The historical record contains significant gaps in our understanding of these events. Popular retellings frequently distort crucial elements, creating simplified narratives that omit complexity. We lack direct access to the private psychological states of the individuals involved. Actions that appear irrational from an external viewpoint had an internal logic known only to them. We cannot clinically diagnose the specific pressures, fears, or cognitive processes that preceded their final decisions. This limitation is common in analyzing complex frauds, where motive is often inferred, not proven. The gap between public perception and private reality is a defining feature of many scandals. Understanding requires acknowledging what we do not and cannot know. The belief in a supposed curse did not directly cause the downfall. Instead, the organization's reaction to that belief triggered a series of damaging consequences. Capital was drained away from core operations to fund superstitious countermeasures or unrelated ventures. This financial diversion led to the critical neglect of the actual, profitable business that sustained the enterprise. Professional networks and potential partners were alienated by the organization's increasingly irrational focus and behavior. Legal entanglements arose from pursuing bizarre, non-core projects intended to break the perceived curse. These were not external attacks, but self-inflicted wounds stemming from a misplaced response. The pattern is clear. It is often the reaction to a crisis, not the crisis itself, that determines the final outcome. The initial misfortune could have been managed, but the response to it proved catastrophic. This story is often reduced to a simple lesson about greed, but that misses the deeper psychological and structural factors at play. It's fundamentally about how extreme isolation, and immense pressure create a state of profound vulnerability. In such environments, normal social and professional safeguards, like skeptical colleagues who might question a decision, are absent. Similarly, the removal of financial constraints, or having seemingly unlimited resources, eliminates another critical feedback mechanism. Budget limits typically force prioritization and scrutiny. Without them, there is no natural check on escalating commitments. These missing safeguards, the lack of peer review and fiscal reality, are what allow disastrous choices to proceed unchecked. The collapse, therefore, stems not from a single flaw, but from a system where failure becomes the only possible outcome. The practical insights from this case focus on risk, governance, and psychology. For leaders or individuals with significant wealth, it highlights the critical need for grounded, independent counsel. A board of directors, a trusted family office, or a peer advisory group provides this essential function. These entities must have the explicit authority to question decisions and challenge assumptions. This oversight is not a luxury or a mere formality.
It acts as a fundamental safeguard against catastrophic financial and reputational failure.
History shows that isolation at the top, without such checks, is a common precursor to major scandals.
The mechanism is simple. External perspective counters the psychological blind spots that accompany power and success.
When a leader bypasses all checks and balances, any fixation, rational or not, can become corporate or personal strategy. This dynamic is not unique to any one industry. It's a pattern observed in corporate fraud, political scandals, and financial schemes. The financial lesson here is critical. Liquidity and assets are tools, not shields against every type of problem. Money cannot solve non-financial issues, such as psychological distress or reputational damage. In fact, throwing money at such problems often amplifies them, creating new liabilities. This reckless spending then becomes exposed to intense legal and regulatory scrutiny. The mechanism is clear. Unchecked authority leads to flawed strategy, and financial resources misapplied as a cure-all worsen the crisis. This pattern repeats in cases where the core issue is human judgment, not a lack of capital.
This pattern of self-deception is common in major financial collapses.
When leaders surround themselves with yes-men, they create an echo chamber. This insulates them from critical feedback and objective reality. The resulting worldview becomes dangerously detached from actual conditions. Resources are then wasted fighting imaginary threats while real dangers grow. This misallocation leaves genuine vulnerabilities completely unaddressed. The cost isn't just financial. It's the erosion of legacy and trust. Ultimately, perception cannot substitute for reality in sustainable systems. The tragedy isn't that a curse was real. It's that the belief in it was so costly. This pattern repeats in financial frauds, where superstition or manufactured fear is weaponized. Victims are convinced to invest based on a shared belief in an impending doom or exclusive salvation. The mechanism is psychological, leveraging anxiety and the desire for security against fabricated threats. Comparatively, this differs from typical Ponzi schemes by adding a layer of existential dread to the financial promise. The real cost is measured in lost savings, broken trust, and the emotional toll of the deception.